Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Verse 4. Prapacharatam arudha karta swara parichadam mega gambiraya vacha samaropita kamukaha. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit, well equipped with arrows and bow and seated on a gold-embossed chariot, spoke to him, the Sudra, with a deep voice sounding like thunder. Purport. An administrative head or king like Maharaj Parikshit with full majestic authority, well equipped with weapons to chastise miscreants, can challenge the agents of the age of Kali. Then only will it be possible to counteract the degraded age. And in the absence of such strong executive heads, there is always disruptions of tranquility. The elected show bottle executive head as representative of a degraded public cannot be equal with a strong king like Maharaj Parikshit. The dress or style of royal order does not count. It is one's actions which are counted. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit, well equipped with arrows and bow and seated on a gold-embossed chariot, spoke to him, the Sudra, with a deep voice sounding like thunder. Maharaj saw the cow and the bull and their condition, and here he approaches this person who was dressed like a king but who was actually Sudra, and he addressed him in a voice like thunder. We see that Maharaj Parikshit had the emblems of a leader. He had a gold embossed chariot, not just one chariot, but it was also decorated with gold, so he was in a high position. And he had his arrows and bow in his hands. So these are indications of his authority as a ruler or a king. Personification of Kali was also showing off symbols of a king. It's not to say what he had, but he was dressed like a king, so he had some emblems, like maybe a crown on his head and a royal robe or something. But he was actually different because he was not qualified for that position. So he dressed in one way, and he was qualified in a much lower standard. So I previously mentioned that one common theme within the Bhagavatam for materialists and for people practicing spiritual life is you act according to your qualification, your adhikar. Okay? And if you jump beyond your adhikar, which is defined by your qualities, then you will fail. So in the material world, if you don't have a doctor's degree but you start practicing medicine generally, you will not cure people. So it's a common type of, a logical, very reasonable type of proposition. Act according to your qualities. Yeah? Of course, we can also say that you can change your qualities, you can advance your knowledge, you can develop more qualities, etc. So therefore you can eventually change your dress, your title, your occupation if you change your qualities and your knowledge. Possible. But if you assume the higher qualification without the real qualifications of knowledge and character and whatnot, then it's actually a disturbance because you don't get the proper result, and it can even be considered cheating. And so we know that also takes place. People assume some role and they're actually, they may say they're a lawyer or doctor and they're not, and then they treat people and everyone ends up with problems because they do the wrong thing. So it is cheating people, and it's of course cheating oneself. One is doing it for the wrong reasons. So one is, let's say, imitating some role for one's personal profit. So therefore, even in the material world, not acting according to qualification is a problem. Of course, there's also an additional problem in the material world, because we try to regulate everything in this way. If you have the qualification, then you can act in that way. If you got a doctor's degree, then you act as a doctor. But then sometimes those qualifications may be there, but still the person is not qualified. So simply if you get the degree doesn't always make you an expert doctor. So we have different types of doctors. Doctors who can't do are pretty hopeless, and doctors who are very expert. Doctors that can cure you, doctors who are interested in making money or whatever and don't cure you. So even if we get the technical qualification according to some standard of government or whatever, then still there could be problems. And therefore the title is empty again. And added to that is not just the knowledge factor and maybe the skill factor, but also the character factor. So you may be qualified as a doctor, but if you have a completely sinful, devious, exploiting, cheating mentality, you could not be a good doctor. Instead of saving people, you may do the opposite. Or you'll do it for personal motives. You'll save or not save different persons. So it could be very, very dangerous because of that. So character is also important. But these things are not always measurable, when we make standards and pass people or fail people or whatever. Not always. It's not a perfect system. So in the material world, that's a problem. And we'll find even the same happens in the varnashram system. People are supposed to be qualified, but they may not be. And this became particularly prevalent when the varnas were determined only by the birth. And then we end up people not qualified because they have the birth, but they don't have anything else. So they got the title, but they don't have the real qualification. Either because of qualities or they weren't raised properly or whatever. And so then we get, again, problem in that system. So just as in the material world we have a problem, so even in the varnashram system you can get problems if the system is not operating properly. Therefore, qualification important, and it creates problems. Here it creates problems because the Sudra was acting as a king, and he's not qualified as a king. And Prabhupada in the purport shows how the unqualified person acting as the executive head is just a show bottle. He's got the title, acting in that with his powers, but he actually has no qualification to lead or make decisions for the benefit of the country. So this is very problematic, and this is exactly what Kali was. He was unqualified by taking the role of a leader. So as a symbol, this indicates that in Kali Yuga, such heads of state who are show bottle executive heads, it's quite a common affair. They're not qualified for the role, but they got the title somehow or other. And consequently, it becomes cheating, and the citizens have to suffer for that. So the big problem. So that's the nature of society. The same thing will also apply to devotional activities. We also act according to qualification. So we have different classifications. We have kanishtas, madhyamas, and uttamas. And they act differently according to their qualification of faith and their knowledge. So the kanishta has very not so strong faith and not known proper knowledge at all. So his only good quality is he has faith that the deity is Supreme Lord. That's about it. Other things he doesn't know about. And so forth. Then his actions follow from that. He'll worship the deity in the temple. That's all he'll do. The Madhyam Adhikari is much more qualified. He has actual faith in pure bhakti. He knows the conclusion of scriptures, difference between Supreme Lord, devatas and other jivas, and matter and jiva, and matter and Supreme Lord. He knows differences. He knows all these things. Sambandha Gyan he has. So he has that knowledge. And he also understands the value of association of devotees from whom he gets the knowledge. So that is a higher qualification, and he can progress nicely in devotional service. But he makes distinctions between devotees and non-devotees, etc. The Uttamadhikari is more highly qualified. He has realization of the Lord. He's not practicing, he has a realization. So accordingly his quality is different. He is absorbed in the Supreme Lord all the time. He is beyond the rules and regulations that the Madhyamadhikari follows. So he's acting differently because he's differently qualified. So, and then along with this we get the externals. Just as Parikshit had on his crown and he was carrying his weapons and he was on a gold chariot, or Kali was dressed up like a king with a crown on his head, with a club in his hand. So the externals of the devotee also go along with the internal development. So the Madhyamadhikari, and the Kanishta also to some degree, they have their external signs. So we tell the Vaishnava by his tilak. So if you have a certain tilak on, oh, you're a follower of Lord Chaitanya, or you're a follower of Ramanuja, or you're a follower of Madhva, you're a follower of Vallabha, according to the type of tilak you have here. And so we can recognize different types of Vaishnavas. That's external sign. Of course, by that we don't know whether he's a Kanishta or Madhyama or Uttama. We don't know that. Well, at least we know he's agreed to put a marking on like that. But he may not be a Vaishnava at all. He may be a demon disguised as a Vaishnava. This is common in India, where people sometimes disguise as devotees. They come to the temple, live in the temple for a while, they do a lot of bhakti. Suddenly they disappear with a lot of money. They steal all the money and run away. The whole purpose was just simply to take money out of the temple. So they may go to the donation box, open it up, and take all the money out and run away. And they got their tilak on, acting like a devotee, got some beads in their hand like this. So that's, they have external signs, so we get fooled. They have tilak on, they look like a devotee, dressed like a devotee, but actually they're not. So therefore that's dangerous. Therefore the devotee also has to act according to qualification. Now we have Kanishtas, Madhyamas, and Uttamas. So the big category of what we call the real devotees are the Madhyamas. But they may also try to act like an Uttama. So we see that Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati often criticize these renounced persons, generally the Babajis, because they dress differently. They don't dress like the Grihastas. They have the tilak, but they don't. They have a very simple dress, whatever, which is very typical of a renounced person. And they live in Radhakund or Vrindavan, like that. And they're supposed to be absorbed in bhajan, chanting Hare Krishna, meditating on the pastimes of the Lord. So if they're qualified, fine, not a problem. So there may be upper madhyamas, there may even be uttamas. We don't know. But then there are people who may adopt that dress, like a Babaji. But they're not doing the activities of a Babaji. They're not constantly chanting, they're not constantly meditating on the Lord. Yes? So there's in the Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda tells one of the stories there is that they're living in Godrum, Dweep, around that area. There's just a group of Bhajamajis. They're all very sincere people. And there's one, he's acting like a Babaji also, but then this devotee goes at night and he sees, oh, what is he doing over there? He's talking to some woman over there in the middle of the night. And then he learned that actually previously he was married to that woman. And the woman was still coming around at nighttime, and they were having conversations in the middle of the night like that. And that was like forbidden for the Babajis to talk to a former wife or something like that. So then later on they confronted him and said, "What are you doing? You're doing like this?" And then eventually he left. He disappeared because he wasn't maintaining proper standards. So he was imitating, but had all the marks. But later they found he was not qualified. And similarly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the same work he mentions that this renounced person, what should be his conduct? And then he says, he should be detached from everything. He should be chanting the name. He should be absorbed in meditation on the Lord, holding spiritual activities all the time. So then somebody asks, well, can he have a temple? Can he sit in one place and develop a temple, etc.? So generally, this is not the conduct of a Babaji. He is supposed to be very detached from everything. So the idea of starting a temple is so you get a permanent place, and then you get donations, so that you can live nicely. So therefore he said, this is not the conduct of the Babaji. You should not do that. So anyone who does that, they'll be considered not qualified again. So they lose their qualification by doing certain types of activities. So they may dress as the Babaji to get the respect from the population, but then their activities are on a lower standard. The people, however, may not know that. They may not know what is the conduct. They just go by the external dress. He's an exalted Babaji, he's detached from everything, he's an Uttamadhikari. So they'll go to him, worship him, give him donations, etc. And then he can survive nicely. So therefore this again is a type of cheating. So if someone assumes by taking a certain type of dress a higher qualification, but actually his mind is not on that level, then that is actually cheating. And eventually he'll be revealed as not having been qualified. And it becomes a disturbance to act on that higher level when he actually is not of that qualification. So therefore within the Vaishnava society also we have to be careful of carefully acting according to qualification. So of course the other qualification is so internal that nobody can detect that, and that is the actual spiritual advancement. You may be a Babaji or a sannyasi, and you're able to keep the vows, etc. That does not automatically say that you are more advanced than a grihastha. Because that, again, is external. And that is why Lord Chaitanya was not interested. He says all of this varna ashram is external. So dividing people up into ashramas and then considering the sannyasi to be higher than the grihastha or the brahmachari or the vanaprastha, that's in one sense, okay, he's more detached. But in terms of bhakti, it's not an absolute rule. So the person who's a grihastha may be the most advanced devotees. And we see in Lord Chaitanya's movement, most of his devotees were grihasthas in Navadvip. When he took sannyasi, went to Puri, then he had a group of sannyasis there. But when he was in Navadvip, all of his devotees were grihasthas. And of course, there were also nityasiddhas and also persons in Krishna Lila as well. But obviously, they were very, very advanced, but they were playing the role of grihasthas. So we cannot ultimately judge Uttamadhikari, Madhyamadhikari according to ashram or dress, externals, etc. It may be different from the external ashram or whatever. So we have to be careful of that. So therefore the final judge is the amount of attraction to Krishna. That's how we have to judge. But that may be very difficult to do. So therefore we look for external signs. And generally we try to coordinate the two together, the external side and internal together. So we try to coordinate the two things, but it doesn't always work. Or the person may change as well. So therefore we end up with some problem. So anyway, qualification is there, and act according to qualification. It's there in the material world. It's also there in terms of devotional service. So the external things are the ashramas, etc., and the varnas. And to some extent that's also for devotees, but again it's external, but we have to act according to your qualification externally also in terms of material qualifications. And then the other is the internal qualification. The only problem is with this, the internal qualification is to advertise yourself as of a superior level when you're not. Of course, you could also adopt the higher dress of a sannyasi, but you're on a low level also. You could do that. Or you could just advertise yourself somehow as a great devotee and publicize that when actually you're not such a great devotee. So again, it's called cheating or imitation or whatever this, you call it kutinati in Sanskrit, devious nature to assume a role which you're not qualified for. So it's dangerous for the self and it's dangerous for the other people, the devotees. So that has to be discouraged in all cases. So whether it's in the material world or in the spiritual world, it is best only to act according to qualification and not beyond that. And then we'll have less problems, be less difficult for us to advance. So here, in terms of this story, we see that in Kali Yuga, taking up the roles without the qualification becomes commonplace. And the problem is that people don't even know what the proper qualifications are for certain positions. Nobody tells them who's qualified to be a leader. There's no set parameters. There's no set of qualifications we can judge the person on, other than they'll go out and make public speeches, and then you could hear their speech and see, but of course the speeches don't mean anything also because they're written by somebody else usually. So very difficult to even figure out what is the actual qualification of the person. And that's one thing. And the other is there's no standards. There's no standards in people's minds by which they can see if the person is fit to be a leader or not fit to be a leader. It's not there. So if we do have democracy system and those qualifications are not there or they're hidden, we don't know what he's doing, he's saying one thing and doing another, then we're bound to get all sorts of unqualified people as leaders. Very, very possible. Consequently, whole country must suffer, earth must suffer, dharma must suffer. Everything becomes problematic. So, very difficult to correct the situation. Parikshit was able to do it. He was a very qualified king, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport. He was qualified to take action against Kali Yuga. So here it says he spoke in a thundering voice. He had great authority, but it was not simply speaking loud. It was based upon his actual qualification and his knowledge. What he should do, he knew what he should do, and he had the power to enforce it. So he was very, very qualified to do that. But after that, we see the leaders become less and less and less qualified until the descendants of Manu gave up completely. And they marched up to the Himalayas, and they're sitting there. So we're left in a very hopeless position. We see when they killed, when King Vena was alive and he was rather demoniac, then the whole country was in turmoil. And then the Brahmanas killed him, and then there was no king at all. And that was also terrible. So having no leader or having an unqualified leader, both are create a big problem for the whole of the country and the whole of the earth. So, or therefore the somehow or other in Kali Yuga, the general tendency is no good leaders or very unqualified leaders and going on until the end of Kali Yuga. So a very, very hopeless case. But as I said previously, the saving grace of Kali Yuga is the only good quality in Kali Yuga is chanting the holy name and the shelter of the Srimad Bhagavatam and worshipping Krishna. So that acts as a you could say something to counter the corrupt population, corrupt leaders of Kali Yuga. Okay, any question?
So in my pictured example, it seems that he was powerful enough to stop the from Kali Yuga. So could it be said that's the reason why, well, he was cursed and killed by snake by taken back? I mean, he was removed from the scene so Kali could progress?
Yeah, that's one way. Of course, the other reason why he got cursed is so that Srimad Bhagavatam gets spoken. So the whole the first canto leads up to the story of Parikshit, everything. Then there's the battle of Kurukshetra, then there's the mourning of Yudhisthira, and there was Bhishma there, all this, end of the battle. Then the Pandavas were on the throne, then the Pandavas left, and they put Parikshit on the throne, and now we're having this story. And then finally Parikshit gets cursed, and then he has to die, and then finally Sukadeva comes along, and he speaks Bhagavatam. So that's how the canto ultimately ends, and then in the next canto, second canto, Sukadeva Vacha, he begins to speak. So the whole thing is leading up to the birth of the Bhagavatam, or the advent of the Bhagavatam. So that's one reason. The other, of course, is that yes, Kali Yuga is going to progress anyway, but the saving grace in Kali Yuga is Bhagavatam, which has arisen like the sun, and then through that curse, Bhagavatam was produced to counteract the influence of Kali.
You mentioned that it's not necessarily renunciation that makes a person advance in bhakti, and that someone may be in the grihastha ashram and be more advanced in public bhakti.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's quite obvious to me. I can see that within our movement, like that. But sometimes it seems like, especially when you're in the transition period, or when you're a younger devotee and you're getting trained in the Brahmacharya ashram, there's still this understanding that if you choose to go to the grihastha ashram, you're not as advanced as someone who tries to push it as far as possible, try to maintain the marks of renunciation. Where did that, do you think that came from, that strong push to stay in the Brahmacharya ashram as long as possible, even if you're not qualified as a renunci?
Well, obviously, if you can dedicate more of your life to sadhana, it's beneficial. And then if you take grihastha life, you do have to support the wife and the children or whatever, so you get somewhat distracted. So in that sense, it's a little more problematic. So in that sense, yes, it's better to be renounced as a brahmacharya, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. You can practice a little freer. The only problem is that it's the qualification is also there for the type of renunciation you take. So if you are not qualified to be a sannyasi, but then you take it, then there'll be problems for yourself and for other people as well. And on the other hand, we know that as a grihastha, you can get married, and of course safer then for you, because you're less qualified in terms of renunciation. Then there's the negative aspect of that you get overcome by grihastha life, so much overcome that you forget about Krishna and you just get involved in your family life. So that's the negative aspect there. So I think that maybe the main thing we say is that renunciation, or the sense of detachment, is necessary in bhakti, whether you're a grihastha or a vanaprastha or a sannyasi or a brahmachari. Some sense of detachment is there. But at the same time, we cannot artificially produce too much detachment. And therefore to just jump over grihastha and take sannyas, that may be artificial for some people. Some people, they can, because naturally they are more detached. Some are less detached, so therefore they shouldn't do that. Of course, by age, you may become more detached. So we see that in the varnashram system, the usual system was the grihastha Brahman, after he raised his children and they were grown up, then he would retire, then he would take vanaprastha. After he did vanaprastha for some time, then he would take sannyas. So he was probably 80 years old or 70 years old when he took sannyas, so that wasn't such a problem then, because he's probably detached anyway by that time. So it was a much more gradual process. In rare cases we see they take when they're young, like Shankaracharya was a boy when he took sannyas, or even in the Madhva Sampradaya today they take when they're children also. So that case is also there, but that's more exceptional. So therefore to some degree, yes, we have to be detached. That's one of the qualifications to begin bhakti, not too attached. So if one takes grihastha, then if one maintains a little bit of detachment and doesn't get overcome by it, fine, then he can practice his devotional life properly. And at a certain time, as he gets older, then he could renounce more and do more bhakti. Others may be qualified to go on. So the traditional varna-ashram system glorifies the sannyas ashram, but actually also glorifies the grihastha ashram. So, because that's the majority of the people. So they don't expect that everybody is going to become a brahmachari and then take sannyas. It's a rare case. Usually they expect they're going to get married. Because that's more common, that there's more grihasthas than sannyasis. So they would expect that. So in other words, it was a little more balanced. So the idea of emphasizing the renunciation, there's a good aspect to it, but again, it's not absolute, because if you act beyond qualification, then it's not good, and you'll fail. So if you continue brahmachari too long, and the more you continue when you're not qualified for the brahmachari life, you need to get married, then your brahmachari life kind of fails out also, and your service to Krishna also fails as a result of that, unless you do get married. So you have to balance it out. Yeah.
Because I noticed sometimes that someone may be practicing for many years, but then in terms of the opposite side, they may demand this state, and because they have certain conditions, they think that they're actually authority on certain things, and there's no other way. So on the other aspect, even the words and the actions that come out, they may not having sadhana or anything, but they demand this state. I remember taking in common came for one retreat, he was saying that one person, I think from the village, came for the kirtan and was telling him that one devotee came and he said, "You know who I am? I'm a Prabhupada." So he moved away from the chair and I missed it, and that person didn't even know what Prabhupada or anything. So it kind of also shows that, but he says that one should be open to be corrected, whatever position one may be. So from these observations, you can also see that you don't want to also become like that. As you were saying, you have to be so careful. So even if you may be practicing for a certain number of years, or maybe even a position, that doesn't give anyone a right to think that I'm
superior. Yeah. Well, that again is external in one sense. We measure the number of years. I've been in the movement for so many years, therefore I get more respect. I'm at a higher level, or I'm a Prabhupada disciple, therefore I'm better than you are. So we have Prabhupada disciples who aren't disciples anymore at all, in one sense. They're in the material world also. So it's not simply because you're a Prabhupada disciple you're better. We do give external respect, definitely, just based on the externals. Just like in the material world, the older person, if he's not so qualified, he gets respect, or the grandfather, even if he's a little bit silly, you give him respect because he's the grandfather or whatever. So based on age also we give some respect, or even to a leader, if he was a fool, we give some external respect even to the leader who is a fool. Or if he's got money also, we'll give respect. So there's levels of respect there, but ultimately, the greatest respect is for a devotee, and as among devotees, and the devotee according to his actual advancement, that's where we give the most respect. So if he's a Mahabhagavata, then we'll give the most respect. If he's a Kanishta, we'll give mental respect or whatever, so we give some respect. But it may be difficult also to figure out that, but to hold on to the externals in terms of either age or whatever, that's artificial in terms of devotional service, because sometimes the youngest devotees are more advanced than the older devotees. Sukadev was young, and all the people were elders like Vasudev and Narada Muni, but they gave respect to Sukadev, who was very young. He was like their grandson, and they all stood up and they were listening to him do the recite the Bhagavatam, because he was very, very advanced. So they understood his position. So we can't really fix age or seniority in terms of externals all the time. We give that external respect, but again, the person himself should not rely on that to get respect also, because we know that the basic rule in bhakti is Trinadapi Sunechina, etc. Hamani namana dena kirtaniya sadahari. We don't expect respect, and we give respect to all others. So that is the qualification for beginning to chant Hare Krishna. So if we lose that qualification later on, there's something wrong with our sadhana. It should be, in other words, I've mentioned before that as you advance in bhakti, that principle that's enunciated in that verse of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will become stronger. And the greatest devotees will show that verse more literally than the neophytes. Yeah? So therefore, that would be the real qualification of a person.
Behaving in that way, we do offer respect, but internally that after they think that I just withdraw and I avoid the person, so how to properly deal with it, because also we may sometimes go to the authority and say such and such person is doing this and that, but that's like also on my part like a controlling mentality that things have to be a certain way.
Yeah, well, we tolerate to some degree. If it becomes a matter of, let's say, a problem, it becomes an obstacle for many people, then it's better to inform somebody, so some correction will be there. Otherwise, it may create more and more problems for different people. So in that case, then we go, if it's just a small thing, we tolerate. If it becomes greater, it's going to affect more people, then we should inform somebody so some action can get taken. Okay. Hare Krishna.